nearly 700,000 at Kiev.
700,000! That one had as many as the Civil War!
And again at Vyazma and
God damn, dude! Holy shit! They got fucked! Dude, the USA is literally at every single, like, area. Dude, we're kind of sick. We're kind of epic. We're kind of fire.
The Emperor and
You know who Whitebeard was like? The UK was kind of Whitebeard. Do not DM my sister. I get it. There are some things you want me to react to. All right? Oversimplified was already one of those things I was gonna be reacting to. Do not DM my sister's private Instagram that she stopped using years ago. Hey, tell Heisuten to react to Oversimplified. Bro, what are you talking? I was already gonna do it. Come on, man. Come on, dude. She said, who is this? He said, Heisen's fan from Pakistan. Bro, I was already going to. I like history.
Churchill was a man with
Let's learn about it.
many talents. He was an artist, a butterfly enthusiast. Churchill was a man with many talents. He was an artist, a butterfly enthusiast, and he had an unpublished manuscript about aliens. Clearly, he was a man with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Maybe he could have loaded up his computer
Aliens.
and logged on to Skillshare, an online learning community
Skillshare?
with more than 19,000 classes. I was genuinely blown away by the number of really useful. First, today, a young man by the name of. Now, without further ado,
It's time for World War II. Somebody did that? Yes, they did that for Oversimplified. Oversimplified reactions, dude. It wasn't even like One Piece or something I'm like really known for, you know? It's Oversimplified.
No, two. A young man by the name of Benito Mussolini moves from Italy to Switzerland to avoid military service.
Bellino Mussolini?
He's big into socialism, working for trade unions, writing for socialist newspapers, advocating a violent overthrow of European monarchies, the whole shebang. This gets him in a bit of trouble with the Swiss police, so he gets arrested, sent back to Italy.
The Swiss police.
European monarchies, the whole shebang. This gets him in a bit of trouble with the Swiss police, so he gets arrested, sent back.
Look at that. Wait, hold on. I gotta see the mugshot again. Hold on.
The whole shebang. This gets him in a bit of trouble with the Swiss police, so he gets arrested.
Just looks like your average Italian guy.
Sent back to Italy, set free, returns to Switzerland, is arrested again, goes back to Italy again, completes his military service after previously avoiding it, and then after a brief stint as an elementary school teacher,
Look at the
finally
kids.
returns to work as an avid socialist. His speeches and journalistic abilities made him famous among Italian socialists. He was anti-war, so when Italy colonized Libya in 1910, he rioted and got arrested. Then World War I came around, and once again he protested Italy's involvement. But then he thought, wait a minute, this war could bring about the social climate needed to overthrow European monarchies and bring about the socialist revolution everywhere. And suddenly he was pro-war, but his fellow socialists didn't like his new pro-war
Damn,
stance, so
bro.
they kicked him out of the party.
War kicked his ass out the building.
So then he said, you know what? I'm done with socialism. We need something new, not based on class divisions tearing us apart, but based on unity through nationality. We'll conquer the Mediterranean and reunite all Italian peoples, just like the days of the Roman Empire. I'll call it fascismo, and it will guide the Italian nation.
Oh,
to greatness. That's all well
no!
and good, Mr.
Bro, just drop fascism!
Mussolini. But what kind of haircut am I giving you? Let's go with bold.
Oh, buddy! Oh my God! He got them eyes, bruh.
Bold.
What are those eyes? They're soul piercing. Like he's literally like, is he going like? Like, what are you doing? What? World War II, baby. I kind of know a little bit about World War II already, just from what you learn in history class. So let's see what else we're gonna know. Well, what else we're gonna learn?
Italy had been on the winner's side in World War I, and they hoped they were going to get a lot out of it, but in the end, they only got a little, and they felt cheated. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that the Italian people were a little unhappy. So when Mussolini came along and said that he could fix everything, his fascist movement gained a lot of support. In 1922, he went to the king and said, make me prime minister, or I'll make me prime minister. And the king said, you and what army? This army.
Damn.
Then he went about establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center.
So he just took that shit over.
Had its first fascist dictator. Next.
Bro literally invented fascism. That's insane. Are there subtitles?
up?
Oh, yeah.
Germany. Germany had been on the loser's side, and they got absolutely wrecked by the Treaty of Versailles. They lost territory, had to demilitarize the Rhineland, had to reduce their army to just 100,000 men, couldn't have an air force, had to pay the Allies a huge amount of money that it didn't have, and a new rule was established that every Englishman withheld the right to walk into the center of Berlin.
What side were you rooting for, hey? Well, I was not rooting for the Three Musketeers. I can tell you that.
And pick out any German they wanted and spank the hell out of them. I made that last one up, but it helps you understand how all this felt to Germans. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that when a small angry man with a silly mustache came along and said that he could fix everything, the German people loved it. Hitler had been a soldier during World War I, and he was crazy patriotic, and nobody was madder than him about Germany's humiliation. He helped start a new political party, and in 1923 attended a march on Munich with his boys. And then he got arrested. But his popularity grew and grew, and in 1933, the president made him chancellor. He believed he was Germany's great destined savior, and he went full megalomaniac, establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had fascist dictator number 2.
It's so... I know it's
Mussolini-
obviously oversimplified, but it's so fascinating how the entire country, like, rallied behind these two people. Germany rallied behind this guy, funny mustache man, and Italy rallied behind this guy. Obviously, not everybody did, but... like, it's so interesting how they actually rose to power and what they promised and what they did not deliver on.
Mussolini had a lot of the same ideas, but more importantly, they had the same enemies, and they started to get along. Anyone else want to be friends? Franco? No? You good? I do. Who's that? It's Japan.
No!
And they've taken over northern China. Let's rewind a bit.
By take over
Japan
China,
had isolated itself from the rest of the world for over 200 years until the Americans showed up and said, you're going to trade with us and you're going to like it. Then the Western powers imposed a bunch of unequal treaties, meaning Japan's economy was bust. They also had no natural resources, so they decided to go get some.
I knew
They
we
went
did
to
some up shit in that History of Japan video.
war with China to gain a sphere of influence over Korea, and they took a bunch of China's stuff. But then the West said, hey, cut that out. And since Japan couldn't take on the West, they said, okay, I guess we'll just go home. Wait a minute, what are you doing? Taking advantage of a weakened China and setting up spheres of influence. But I was the one who weakened them. We know. And you guys didn't let me have anything. We know. That seems unfair. We don't think so.
Oh my god.
Okay, see ya. So Japan thought, screw this, and went to war with Russia, and stunned everyone by actually winning. Then they fully annexed Korea, but they didn't stop there.
Damn!
In World War I, they took Germany's colonies and islands in Asia.
How did
And
they
then
won
in an
against Russia
incident
then?
that was maybe staged by the Japanese army, a bomb blew up a Japanese train in Manchuria, giving them an excuse to launch an invasion and take over.
Maybe
The bomb blew up
staged?
colonies and islands in Asia. And then in an incident that was maybe staged by the Japanese army.
Does anybody know what the first case of staging your own, like, attack? Is that the right word? They're staging their own incident is? Your live stream.
Army, a bomb blew up a Japanese train in Manchuria, giving them an excuse to launch an invasion and take over. So here's the situation. Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan all believe they're racially superior, all feel hostility towards the Allies,
Racially
and all want to
superior is
militarize
insane.
and take over more stuff. And so they did.
Yeah,
Let's
false flag. What was the first? Anybody know the first ever recorded example of that?
start with Germany. Hitler hated the Treaty of Versailles, and now he was ready to begin undoing it. In complete violation of the treaty, the first Luftwaffe squadrons were set up, conscription was introduced, and he pimped up his army. The Allies did nothing. Then Hitler sent his army back into the demilitarized Rhineland, giving orders to immediately retreat if the Allies
So bro straight up violated the treaty, and they were like, all right.
showed up. The Allies did nothing. With his military re-strengthened, he could now move on to step 2. He wanted to rapidly increase the Aryan population, and to do so, he needed Lebensraum, or in other words, he would have to take over the
Living
world. But for now,
space.
a good portion of Europe would do, and he began eyeing up his neighbors. The Allies finally started to get worried, so they implemented a fairly useless diplomatic strategy called appeasement, and it went a little something like this.
Appeasement.
Hitler would say, I want that thing, and the Allies would say, you can't have that thing. Okay, you can have that thing, but no more. I want that thing.
Bruh.
And repeat. In
No
1938,
way!
Hitler's army marched into Austria and just
What?
took it with no resistance. Boom. This is Germany now. Next, he demanded to
Were
be
the
given
Allies like trying to do anything possible to not cause World War II? Because like, bruh, that's got to be the worst political. Like he just literally kept taking shit.
the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia with many ethnic Germans. The Allies held a meeting with Hitler in Munich and said, look, we're going to give you what... Hang on. This meeting is about my territory. Shouldn't I come to the meeting too? Anyway, we're going to give you what you
No,
want.
they did not do
Really?
that.
Yeah.
What?
Just like that? Yep. What's the catch? Just sign this piece of paper promising you won't invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay. Then Chamberlain returned home victorious, waving his signed piece of paper in the air, declaring crisis to be averted and the continuation of world peace. And we built a statue of Chamberlain in his honor, and every day on the 30th of September we celebrate Chamberlain Day. Hitler's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. What? He's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia.
Who could have seen that coming?
You lied to me. What do you expect? I'm Hitler. Not to be outdone, Mussolini also wanted to get in on the action. He thought to himself, isn't there a
What
not
is
yet
Mussolini's character? They did his eyes perfect, bruh. They also gave him a girthy ass forehead
nation
vein.
somewhere which is so underdeveloped that the people would be defending themselves against our tanks with literal bows and arrows and wooden spears? Oh, there is? Fantastic. And so he took it. Italy also wanted to control the entrance to the Adriatic Sea, so they occupied Albania. Then, in another incident which was maybe staged by the Japanese, gunfire was exchanged by Japanese and Chinese troops.
Maybe. Okay? Maybe.
The Marco Polo Bridge, and the Japanese launched yet another invasion against China. They swept through Beijing and Shanghai, and then advanced through the Yangtze Valley to China's then capital, Nanking. It was here that saw the worst of Japan's shocking atrocities committed against the Chinese people.
Oh, right.
Back in Europe, Germany and Italy made
It wasn't called the loving of Nanking
status official by signing the Pact of Steel. Then Hitler turned his eyes towards Poland and the hated Polish corridor, splitting Germany in two. At this point, the Allies really had to put their foot down, and they warned him that an invasion of Poland would mean war. Hitler had planned to continue his advance eastward, but he didn't want to end up fighting a war on two fronts. So for now, he made an alliance with Stalin, saying, how about we both invade Poland and split it between the two of us, and I definitely won't not refrain from not betraying you sometime in the future.
Won't not refrain.
Sounds good. This new alliance stunned the West. On the 1st of September 1939, German troops entered Poland, and Britain and France declared war on Germany.
Damn.
The Poles fought hard, but they were...
As the Poles, you kind of got to feel like somewhat like, thank you for having my back, but also we're fucked. You already let them get this far. Combined with Russia?
no match for the two giants crashing down on them from either side.
So unfortunate.
Then came a period known as the Phony War, where everyone just sort of sat around not doing much. The French had launched a small invasion into the Saarland, but they maintained mostly defensive positions.
Never mind. As a Polish, I'd be pissed, man. I'd be so mad. I got my whole Badusi invaded. The whole thing is taken. We had a treaty. You declared war in name only.
And after a while, decided to just turn around and call it a day.
What?
Speaking of France,
they just called it a day.
Proud of their victory in World War I, and they hadn't really moved on from it. They still used horses. They dispatched messages by motorbike instead of using radio. Orders from the commander-in-chief were usually pretty vague.
Drills and
rarely
stuff.
inspected. They built a line of
Wait,
defenses
who is
for
this?
commander-in-chief. They still used France. The French were still super proud of their victory in World War I, and they hadn't really moved on from it.
They were
still
too
used
busy
horses. They
stroking their own
dispatched
meat?
messages by motorbike instead of using radio.
Oh
Orders from the
my
commander-in-chief were usually pretty vague, and the troops were rarely inspected. They built a line of defenses along their German border, but didn't bother extending it all the way to the Channel.
What?
And they wouldn't launch artillery strikes against Germany out of fear of being retaliated against. In a war, they didn't want to attack the enemy. But at first, the UK wasn't much better. Chamberlain still naively hoped that the war could be ended diplomatically. Instead of bombing raids, the RAF dropped propaganda leaflets over German cities, which one air marshal said likely did nothing but provide the continent with toilet paper for the duration of the war. They also only sent 200,000 men to France, while the French had mobilized millions. Both Britain and France wanted to avoid a repeat of the First World War, and so they wanted to keep the war as far from home as possible. So they turned their eyes north, towards Norway. Neutral Sweden was exporting iron ore to
Norway?
Germany through neutral Norway. So the Allies asked them if they could please stop exporting iron ore to Germany, but this request was refused. Then the Soviet Union attacked Finland. So the Allies said, how about we land troops in Norway and move them across Sweden to go help out your good pal Finland, and along the way maybe take control of all your arm fields. But Norway and Sweden still said no. So the UK mined the waters around Norway to force any transport ships into international waters, and they also attacked a German tanker they found in the area.
Wait, what?
So the Allies exporting iron ore to Germany through neutral Norway. So the Allies asked them if they could please stop exporting iron ore to Germany, but this request was refused. Then
They both said
the Soviet
no.
Union attacked Finland. So the Allies said, how about we land troops in Norway and move them across Sweden to go help out your good pal Finland, and
they said no to that too?
along the way maybe take control of all your iron fields.
Oh, the iron fields is why. Okay.
So Norway and Sweden still said no.
I mean, if I was gonna be like, fuck off as well, you ain't taking my shit. Why the fuck would I let you take my shit?
The UK mined the waters around Norway to force any transport ships into international waters, and they also attacked a German tanker they found in the area. Hitler realized what the Allies were up to, and he quickly moved to secure his supply of iron ore. He launched an invasion through Denmark into Norway.
Ooh.
The Allies rushed to land troops at key ports along the coast, but Germany had taken control of Norway's airfield, and their air superiority decided the fight.
Damn,
The
that's
Allies
tough.
had to retreat. After this slightly embarrassing failure, Chamberlain resigned and was replaced with Winston Churchill, who had a
Dude,
slightly
they could not lose at the beginning. Holy shit.
different approach to dealing with the Germans. Hitler's overall strategy was similar to Germany's First World War strategy. Attack France, defeat France, knocking out the UK in the process, then turn on the Soviet Union and win the war. During the phony war, the Allies had given Hitler time to prepare his forces. Now, he was ready to attack. The Allies had
They
wanted
literally gave him time to prepare.
to place troops in Belgium, but Belgium had
Hey man, could you let our armies in? Hell no, I ain't doing this again. Used to be way cool. You're like way cooler back in the day. Let's go in there.
refused. And in a move that surprised pretty much no one, Hitler launched an invasion to get around France's defenses.
What?
The Allies charged
Who
into
coulda
Belgium at full
guessed?
speed to meet the German invasion head-on, and it looked like a repeat of the First World War was coming. But this time, Hitler had a trick up his sleeve. Blitzkrieg. As the Germans advanced, they sent thousands of
I do know this one. Blitzkrieg is where they blitz ya.
refugees westward, slowing down the Allies. Then, to the south, the French had left the Ardennes. an
I didn't know
area
they
full of
sent a bunch of who?
westward,
Refugees.
slowing down the Allies. Then,
Slow
to the
them
south,
down?
The French had left the Ardennes, an area full of hills and forests, pretty underdefended because they thought it was naturally impenetrable. Well, the Germans were about to penetrate it with everything they had. They smashed 50
Damn.
Wehrmacht divisions through and encircled the Allied armies at
Damn.
lightning speed. The
Holy
best of the Allied forces were
shit.
now trapped. The Germans squeezed in from all sides, taking out France's best armies and nearly wiping out the British too, but they managed to make
Wow.
a desperate last-minute escape to
Dunkirk!
with British civilian ships even making the perilous journey to bring their young men home. With most of the French forces depleted, the
Jesus.
Germans breezed through, taking Paris, and France fell. What the
Wow! That's how they took France? France's own incompetency from World War I's victory got their whole country immediately. That's insane, bro.
Germans couldn't do in World War I, Hitler had done just like that. Hitler hoped that with the fall of France, the UK would also lose hope. And
Hey, yo,
sink
how the
peace.
fuck did we win at this point? What the f?
Quite annoyingly, Hitler hoped that with the fall of France, the UK would also lose hope and sue for peace. But quite annoyingly, it didn't, and he needed to secure the Western
didn't.
Front.
They
so
did
he
not
tried
give
to
up.
force them into submission with mind games. The UK were now all alone, and Hitler wanted to emphasize that. First of all, just before France
Yeah,
fell,
bro, that's so scary being from the UK. Like if you're a UK citizen, you literally were chilling. You had thousands of miles between you and like anybody you were villain or enemies with. And then all of a sudden, that motherfucker took this and they're kind of close. And they took that country and they're kind of close. And they took these countries and they're very close. And they took freaking France and they're like extremely on your doorstep now. Like, and you're just a small country. Like, yeah, you're really powerful and you've always been powerful throughout history. But like, in terms of pure land size, like they got pretty much every geographical advantage in terms of like resources and stuff. How the fuck did we win, the Allies?
declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just occupying all of France,
That's why it's so crazy the UK did not surrender.
Hitler occupied the coastal areas for defense, but allowed France to instead of just occupy, he declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just occupying all of France, Hitler occupied the coastal areas for defense, but allowed France to continue its existence as a German puppet state. This way, it looked like the UK's old ally had decided to switch sides. Hitler also hoped that the UK wouldn't attack any of her old allies' navy bases or colonies.
Like look how much the UK took in Africa. Holy fuck.
In Africa, giving Hitler an extra line of defense to the south, but the UK made sure to respond to this by sailing down to France's navy base in Algeria and wrecking a bunch of ships. So have at it.
Okay.
Hitler then began laying down plans for an invasion of Great Britain. Before German troops could land on British soil, he would first need air and naval superiority across the Channel. Waves of German bombers came, while the completely outnumbered RAF worked bravely around the clock in an attempt to quell the German attacks. At first,
my
the Luftwaffe
God.
targeted British ports and coastal facilities. Then it attacked RAF bases, crippling the RAF's ability to defend the nation. And it looked like Hitler's
Damn.
Great British invasion was coming.
Did-
but then,
how did it
Churchill
not?
ordered a small, pretty insignificant bombing raid over Berlin. It didn't do much damage, but Hitler was furious.
No.
So he immediately ordered a significant bombing raid over
Ah.
Berlin. It didn't do much damage, but Hitler was furious.
Führer.
and he immediately ordered the Luftwaffe to refocus its attacks on civilian targets in London. Children were sent off to the countryside away from their parents to avoid danger, and frequent trips to air raid shelters became a daily occurrence.
That's
but
when the
British
bombing
morale held
happened.
firm. Smiling, knitting, lounging casually, these people have balls of steel.
Drinking tea and whatnot.
Focusing on London also gave the RAF breathing space to reorganize, so Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there.
Really?
On London firm, smiling, knitting, lounging casually, these people have balls of steel. This refocusing on London also gave the RAF breathing space to reorganize, so Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there.
Damn, bro.
Just the foot for now. Finally, the Luftwaffe sent
So because he got pissed and went for civilians, that is literally the start to his downfall. That's how they didn't get invaded instantly.
attack on London, and the RAF successfully repelled it, destroying many of the German aircraft and placing air superiority firmly in British hands.
Wow! How did they do that?
But the bombing of
because he went for London, they won. Holy shit.
All-out attack on London, and the RAF successfully repelled it, destroying many of the German aircraft and placing air superiority firmly in British hands.
There's gonna be so many what-ifs in this freaking war where Hitler was so close to taking literally everything over. Like, he already had everything, basically, besides the UK at this point. But that mistake literally led to him not having air superiority just because he tried to be a fucking asshole and bomb London.
Invasion had to be postponed, but the bombing of British cities continued for some time.
Part 2.
This video was made possible by Skillshare, an online learning community. Stick around until the end of the video to learn how you can get an exclusive deal just for Oversimplified viewers. So what else is happening? Well, when I said Britain was all alone, that wasn't entirely true. Many Commonwealth nations and other allied colonies had joined the war.
But they're so far away.
They would play a key role throughout the war, particularly in the African and Italian campaigns. On the Axis side, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed the defensive tripartite pact, bringing their military alliance even closer together. The Soviet Union's war against Finland should have been an easy victory, but it became a humiliating struggle, and their military ineptitude was put on full display.
Damn!
In the end, they did force the Finns to sue for peace. Then, they continued their honorable campaign of pushing around much smaller countries by annexing the Baltic states and part of northern Romania. France's colonies in Equatorial...
How did they lose to Finland? Like, I definitely know... Oh, that's at the bottom. I definitely know Finland is small.
Around much smaller countries by annexing the Baltic states and part of northern Romania. France's colonies in Equatorial Africa were like, heck no, we aren't going to join the Germans, and they all pledged their allegiance to free France, except for Gabon, which had to be taken by military force. The Allies also tried to capture the strategic port of Dakar, but that ended in failure. Mussolini had seen Hitler's successes, and he thought now it was Italy's time to shine, so he tried to take British Somaliland, and that went pretty well. Then he tried to take Egypt, and that went less well. Then he tried to take Greece, and that went really badly. Churchill began referring to Italy as Europe's soft underbelly.
Damn! The Finns were Giga Chads. Because we built different? Your ass is not Finnish? I don't know. The Finnish people, Finland, was it really Russia's military ineptitude, or was Finland just them?
He began favoring a military campaign from the south and started sending British troops to Greece. All of this had Hitler pretty concerned, and he moved to protect his southern flank. He had been getting friendly with Hungary and twisted their arm into
both. So has Russia always just been kind of like militarily, like strategically kind of bad? They just got a lot of people and a lot of land and a lot of resources. Is that a hot take to say? I don't know. Because like, how the fuck you losing? How you lose so consistently?
They're pretty concerned, and he moved to protect his southern flank. He had been getting friendly with Hungary and twisted their arm into signing the tripartite pact. And
Finland is Sweden's little bro. They basically Swedish. You are gonna piss off a lot of Finnish people with that one.
Powers. He had been getting friendly with Hungary and twisted their arm into signing the tripartite pact and joining the Axis powers. Romania was also eager to join for protection against the Soviet Union. The tripartite pact...
I'm sorry, I gotta rewind one more time.
He began favoring a military campaign from the south and started sending British troops to Greece. All of this had Hitler pretty concerned, and he moved to protect his southern flank. He had been getting friendly with Hungary and twisted their arm into signing the tripartite pact and joining the Axis powers. Romania was also eager to join for protection against the Soviet Union. The tripartite pact was designed to prevent any other countries from deciding to join the Allies, specifically Britain's old ally, the United States of America. When war first broke out, in 1940, there was when war first broke out, American public opinion was strongly against joining in. In 1940, there was an election. The Republican candidate said,
Wendell Willkie? Wendell Willkie. Wendell Willkie.
Any young Americans to die in Europe. And sitting President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, I will also not send any young Americans to die in Europe. Unless I have to, then I might. And Roosevelt won. Churchill asked him to join the war. Roosevelt said, no can do, Winston. But you know what? Here, have some weapons. America began supplying the Allies with food and munitions. But there was one problem. German U-boats were sinking thousands of Allied supply ships in the Atlantic, including American ones. If the Germans could sever Britain's supply line, the UK would starve. Throughout the war, the Allies had to come up with better technology to fight the U-boats. Improved radar, aircraft with longer range, better weaponry and convoy tactics. At one point, a man even called a meeting and said, Pikeri, you take some...
Then we were like, hey, this shit kind of profitable, ain't it?
You take some ice, you put them together, you get Pikeri. And then he pulled out a gun and shot some wood and it shattered. And then he shot some Pikeri and the bullet ricocheted off it and hit someone else in the conference room. And then they tried to make a Pikeri aircraft carrier, but that idea...
Wait, what the fuck is Pikeri?
Improved radar, aircraft with longer range, better weaponry and convoy tactics. At one point, a man even called a meeting and said, Pikeri, you take some wood, you take some ice, you put them together, you get Pikeri. And then he pulled out a gun and shot some... In the end, then they tried to make a Pikeri aircraft carrier, but that idea was scrapped because that's a really dumb idea. In the end, Alan Turing and his team of codebreakers cracked Germany's Enigma code, and the U-boats gradually became less and less...
so that whole lesson on Pikeri was just a little fun fact. This wasn't even anything that was like revolutionary.
Threat. Back in Africa, Britain decided to push Italy out of Egypt. Hey, that was pretty easy. So they kept going. Hitler realized...
God damn, they ass, bro. As an Italian, I'm embarrassed, but also, maybe it's a good thing he was not very good.
He step in and do something. He went to Bulgaria and Yugoslavia and said, hey, I'm going to move troops through you to get to Greece. So either join us or, be invaded. Bulgaria opted to join them. Yugoslavia opted to be invaded. Then Greece finally fell to the joint German-Italian invasion. The British had moved troops from North Africa to fight in Greece, which helped Rommel and his tank divisions push the British back to
Damn,
Egypt,
Hitler is carrying the Axis. He got the squad on his back right now.
Kept going, but a small, mostly Australian force held out under siege for 8 months in Tobruk, denying the Germans a strategic port city and disrupting their supply line.
Damn, the Aussies! That's so many like really interesting small battles, or like, I guess they weren't even small, but and the whole scale of it, in the great scheme of things, so many details. I'm like, I want to know about that. That's interesting as fuck.
Denying the Germans a strategic port city and disrupting their supply line. Despite having some success in the Middle East, the British didn't seem like any real threat for now. Hey, Soviet Union, look out. With 3 million troops, Hitler launched the largest ground invasion in history.
Think fast, chuckle nuts! Ah! We're coming for your ass!
Alan was far from ready. Both Churchill and Roosevelt...
Like, what? Dude, you were literally there. You were literally there.
Largest ground invasion in history, and Stalin was far from ready. Both Churchill and Roosevelt had warned him of an impending attack, but he dug his head in the sand, and the Soviets didn't stand a chance. Germany made staggering progress, with huge encircling movements capturing mind-boggling numbers of Russian troops. 250,000 at Bialystok, Minsk.
Damn!
300,000
250,000's insane. Like,
Smolensk.
Dude, 300,000? Like, how many people died in the Civil War? Let's put this in American terms, because that's the bloodiest battle or some shit for us. 620 to 850K. They, in these two encirclements, had nearly
numbers of Russian troops.
The amount of total deaths in American Civil War. They just encircled that amount of people and just captured them.
250,000 at Bialystok, Minsk. 300,000 at Smolensk.
How do you even have that? What do you even do with that many people? You can't feed them.
Nearly 700,000 at Kiev.
700,000! That one had as many as the fucking Civil War.
And again at Vyazma and
God damn, dude! Holy shit! They got fucked!
Leningrad was put under a siege.
Oh my god! How do you lose that badly.
700,000.
That is so like, imagine having a near goddamn 1 million of your boys. 1 million. An entire almost million people. That's so many people that just got captured. That many in the entire war, the whole war was captured in, I don't even know how many days. Just one city. That is an unfathomable amount of people. What do they even do with that many people? Kill them all? Like, did they just murder everyone?
Bialystok, Minsk.
It says they captured them, but like...
300,000 at Smolensk, nearly 700,000 at Kiev, and again at Vyazma and Bryansk. Leningrad was put under a siege that would last an insufferable 4 years. The
in Leningrad.
invasion of Russia had been Hitler's main ideological goal from the beginning, and his hatred for the ethnic peoples there was now unleashed.
Oh my God, he just hated everyone.
Its fury. The Eastern Front of the Second World War was brutal for all that endured it. The Germans were now inside of Moscow, and that's it. It's all over. But then it happened. It got cold.
No!
Hitler had hoped the Soviets would give up before
Not
winter, but they
Hitler's
kept
main
fighting. His commanders came
strategy! He didn't look out for the weather. Is that literally what happened? They just got cold?
and that's it. It's all over. But then it happened. It got
Bro
cold.
was on his main character arc.
Stupid cold. Hitler had hoped the Soviets would give up before winter, but they kept fighting. His commanders came to him and said, "Can we please dig in for the winter and wait until spring?" "No. Keep going." "But oil is literally freezing inside our vehicles."
My God.
"That's fine. Keep going. We're having to leave the corpses of our frozen horses by the side of the road so we can still find our way in the snowdrift." "Perfectly normal. Keep going."
Jesus,
Hitler had given his millions of men
dude.
winter clothing and supplies because he thought he really should have won by now. Then, Stalin called in troops from the Siberian front, specially trained to fight in the extreme cold, and the Germans were no match. They were now being pushed back. They had no choice but to dig in and wait
Like,
for
how
winter to-
many people did they even have? Like, millions were captured.
Germany's victories were staggering, and Japan was eager not to miss the victory bus. Their war in China had come to a standstill, but they wanted to keep expanding their sphere of influence and getting those sweet, sweet raw materials. They began making plans to expand southward, but there was a problem. Southeast
not
Asia
the
was heavily
Philippines.
colonized by America and Great Britain. It was also full of ocean. Ocean meant naval combat, and there was no way the Japanese Navy could stand up to the US and the UK. So they thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could destroy their navies before we begin our conquest? And so it was. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese launched a
And so they fucked
surprise air raid
around.
on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor and inflicted a huge amount of damage. They also attacked
21
British
ships. Chat.
on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl
You know,
Harbor
until like
and inflicted a huge
approximately,
amount of
I'm not
damage.
even exaggerating, 3 months ago, I thought like 3 ships were sank in Pearl Harbor.
They also attacked British colonies in Southeast Asia. Roosevelt had no choice but to declare war on Japan, and so did Churchill. Hitler then declared war on America, even though he totally didn't have to. The attack on Pearl Harbor seemed like a big Japanese victory, but they didn't attack any of the naval repair yards, fuel storage tanks, or the submarine base, meaning the Pacific Fleet would be up and running again pretty soon. In the meantime,
So their strategy was to like a half fuck around. They didn't even get the fuel storage tanks. Like Hawaii is not that big. While you were there, you could have definitely exploded the fuel. The fuel's super explosive, man. Not even the naval repair yards? What kind of intel did they have? What?
storage tanks, or the submarine base, meaning the Pacific Fleet would be up and running again pretty soon. In the meantime, though, the Japanese were able to begin their conquest. They took Guam, the Gilbert Islands, Wake
Not
Island,
Gilbert Islands. What? I didn't even know the Gilbert Islands existed.
Hong Kong, and the Philippines. They forced Thailand to join them so they could march their troops through to Malaya. They swept through Singapore, North Borneo, the East Indies,
God
New Guinea, the
damn.
Solomons, and they were now threatening northern Australia and the borders of India.
Damn!
Japan's
I had no idea Japan went that crazy.
victory as the Germans, and it reinforced the Japanese
Oh my
idea.
God, they got
and the
so
borders of India.
much. Like
Japan's
all of India?
victory had been a staggering.
All the way up from like India to all this? Imagine if all this was like one country. Like Japan had it. I wonder if like all of Southeast Asia like teamed up, like united. I wonder how strong they'd be.
as the Germans.
Gilbert
And it
DeGroote.
reinforced the Japanese idea that this was a divine war which they were destined
Victory
to win. But the victories
boss!
had been based on speed, not power, and power would eventually catch up with them.
All right,
For
Japan,
now,
you
though,
fucked
in
around.
oil-occupied nations, the people suffered.
Time to find out.
Persecution, forced labor, harsh punishments for any who spoke out against their occupiers. In Europe, the Nazis were rounding up ethnic minorities and other unwanted groups and individuals. In particular, millions of Jewish people would suffer through the terrible events of the Holocaust. Brave resistance movements rose up in defiance of their invaders, while the people held out for hope. And hope was coming. Winter was over, and Hitler could continue his push eastward. But this time, he switched up
Why
his
the
strategy.
fuck
He
did
wanted
Hitler declare? Like, if he wasn't such a psychopath, like, imagine if Hitler's goal wasn't to be like a fucking genocidal maniac. If he would have stayed teamed up with Russia, then they would have just taken over literally probably everything. Like most things.
south. His plan was to cut off the Russian armies in the Caucasus, an area full of oil, and then invade the Caucasus and take all the oil. His forces moved across the north with ease, and Hitler got cocky. He rerouted the 4th Panzer Army south early, leaving the 6th Army to complete the encircling movement alone. To do so, the 6th Army had to reach and take the key Soviet city of Stalingrad. The Russians defended it fiercely, and Stalingrad saw some of the harshest fighting of the entire war. The
Damn.
Soviets held up the German advance for 5 months as they battled in the war-torn city, which bought them valuable time. When the Germans had first
5
launched their
months?
invasion a year earlier, the Soviets had moved their factories to the east. Those factories had been building a butt-ton of tanks and aircraft and getting the Soviet army up to scratch.
Yo,
Now,
T-34-85 just dropped.
those factories had been building
What
a
y'all know about
butt-ton of
tanks,
and
chat?
aircraft and getting
Or is that a T-34?
the Soviet army up to scratch. Now, it was ready. Stalin gathered his new and improved forces around the city, and in an attack that resembled Hitler's own encirclement tactics,
They
they began surrounding the 6th
They
Army.
literally learned.
Hitler's commanders came to him and said, "Hey, maybe we should retreat." But Hitler said, "No, you stay."
Nah. That's the third shot.
The entire 6th Army was trapped and had to surrender.
Wow.
With complete air superiority, the Soviets
He was just
started
too
pushing
arrogant.
westward. For Stalin, it was a resounding
He
victory.
won
For
too much too quick. I don't think he thought he could lose, bruh.
Hitler, an absolute catastrophe. Things also weren't looking too good for Hitler elsewhere. With America now in the war, Allied bombing over German cities reached devastating levels. In Africa,
Devastating.
the British had pushed Rommel back again. Then they were pushed back again.
Oh.
And finally, after a decisive battle at El Alamein, and with American and British troops arriving in the west, the Germans and Italians were squeezed out of Africa. Japan was also already seeing
Damn! Get the fuck out here,
British
bitch!
troops arriving in the west.
USA! USA! USA!
The Germans and Italians were squeezed out of Africa. Japan was also already seeing its rapid success being turned around. They attempted to take the island of Midway, but the US Navy was ready for the attack, and they sank Japan's carrier.
Battleships.
Actually, they sank a lot of them. It was a
Damn.
battle from which the Japanese Navy would never recover. British,
Shit
Indian,
on.
and Chinese troops held the line in the harsh jungle terrain of Burma, and the Japanese suffered losses in the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. They began to
Dude, the
realize they were
US came in here and everything started winning. Literally, everything started winning. We got Africa back. We're working on
not
Asia.
invincible. With the Axis out of Africa, the Allies had
And Russia already got that, but that wasn't really
to
us.
decide their next move. Churchill still wanted to attack from the south, while the Americans preferred a full sea invasion in northern France. All right, said the Americans, we'll do it your way. Allied forces successfully landed in Sicily.
Wouldn't
and
you
began
think you would be listening to the guy who's helping? I don't know.
moving north. They also carried out bombing raids over Rome. The thing was, many of the people in Sicily had relatives living in America, and they greeted the American troops quite warmly. With the
Oh.
war reaching home territory, most Italians just weren't that into it, and Mussolini was suddenly very unpopular. He was voted
Oh.
out by his own fascist Grand Council and was
Once
toppled
again.
from power. Italy immediately began negotiations for surrender.
How the
His own
fuck
fascist
anybody
Grand
see
Council
those
and was
damn eyeballs and vote for him, though, is my question. I'm creating fascism.
immediately began negotiations for surrender. Hitler wasn't surprised and had already sent reinforcements southward. In an operation he ironically called Operation Axis, German troops quickly disappeared.
I was in my own
Italy
head.
immediately began negotiations for surrender.
Pat
Hitler
Mouty.
wasn't surprised and had already
He
sent
was not surprised. What if Hitler had a stronger ally instead of Italy? There's so many what ifs, bro. What if he wasn't a fucking genocidal man? What if he's like Napoleon and just wanted to take everything? If his goal was to take everything, I really feel like he could have. But his literal desire to kill people based on what they look like was too great.
In an operation he
They
ironically
publicly hung him? That's pretty fucking funny.
called Hitler wasn't
That's pretty goated.
surprised and had already sent reinforcements southward. In an operation he ironically called Operation Axis, German troops quickly disarmed Italian troops in the north. The Allies continued fighting the Germans up through Italy, but then winter set in, meaning mud, and everything slowed to a halt.
Mud.
All right, said the Americans, let's do it our way as well. Germany had made itself a lot of enemies, and millions of Allied troops had been gathering in England as factories worked around the clock producing the war material needed for a super crazy massive, the likes of which the world has never seen before, invasion of Europe. The Germans knew an Allied invasion would come, but they didn't know where it would land. Thanks to Allied deception tactics, they thought there was a pretty good chance it would come at Calais, but the Allies were really going to land in Normandy because it was less fortified and the beaches were nicer. Under the careful planning, they were really going to land in Normandy because it was less fortified and the beaches were nicer. Under the careful planning of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the invasion that had been long in the making was just about ready to go. Just one thing was preventing the launch.
It's a little strange to give him the credit, isn't it? Unless he actually came up with this plan.
Under the careful planning of General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Oh, he's general. He ain't president? Roosevelt was still president. Was this the same Eisenhower who became president later? D-Clan. I thought he was the president and they were saying he planned it under his, I was about to say. Okay, so I guess this probably helped him win presidency later, huh? This brother is the one who planned the invasion on Normandy. That's an insane amount of like aura to have to your name. Like everybody knows you're the one who planned the biggest massive invasion on Europe ever. It don't matter what the fuck else you did. It don't matter that you even got a D in your name, bruh. Like, you're just kind of him immediately.
The invasion that had been long in the making was just about ready to go. Just one thing was preventing the launch: the British weather. For a short while, everyone sat around waiting for a decent day,
UK.
and then it came. On the night of June 5th, over 1,000 bombers took off and raided coastline defenses. Paratroopers were dropped inland in a bit of a chaotic operation, tasked with sabotaging defenses and capturing key bridges to stop any German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Early the next morning, the barrage came, as Allied ships fired a huge number of shells at the German fortifications. And then, the landings. The Americans at Utah and Omaha, the British at Golden
So they were
at
shooting
the German fortifications.
I'm just trying to imagine that. I've always tried to imagine like how big those fucking guns are on those boats, and it's so hard. Like it's so hard for me to imagine like a shell like bigger than me, bruh. Like they are launching like from miles, aren't they?
Then the landings. The Americans at Utah and Omaha, the British at Golden Sword. And
why is that Canada's flag?
Canadians at Juneau. It was a tremendous struggle with a great loss of life, particularly at Omaha, but the Allied troops captured the beaches and the landings were a
that's an
success.
insane shot. The size of a small car. 20 plus miles. Holy fuck.
Then they began their movements inland. They took the port of Cherbourg and the city of Caen. The Americans moved south to capture Brittany. Then, in a massive disaster for the Germans, British and Canadian troops from the north and Americans from the south trapped the German 7th Army in a near wipeout encircling movement. In August, Allied troops landed in the south of France to little resistance. On one beach,
dude, the USA is literally at every single like area.
In August, Allied troops landed in the south of France to little
resistance. Dude, we're kind of sick. We're kind of epic. We're kind of fire.
On beach, all they found was a Frenchman handing out champagne. Paris was liberated, and the Germans
wait, what?
In a near wipeout encircling movement. In August, Allied troops landed in the south of France to little resistance. On one beach, all they found was a Frenchman handing out champagne. Paris was liberated, and the Germans were pushed out of France as the Allies entered Belgium. In the Far East, the Allies started to push the Japanese out of Burma, as the Americans launched a two-pronged offensive in the Pacific. In the south, General MacArthur led the push to liberate the Philippines.
General MacArthur, I did learn about that fucking psycho a few times.
Nimitz oversaw the brutal island-hopping campaign. American forces had to make hard-fought landing after hard-fought landing on fiercely defended small islands as they moved steadily towards the Japanese mainland. The Japanese believed that the greatest thing a person could do was to die in battle, and the most dishonorable act was to surrender. As a result, they fought ferociously.
A few hundred K about to die in battle right now, brother.
The Americans got to the mainland, the more ferocious the resistance became. In February 1945, the Americans captured the island of Iwo Jima, and an intense firebombing campaign of Japan's wooden cities began. The Allies suffered some setbacks trying to liberate the Netherlands, but they were making progress and were now threatening the industrial heartland of Germany. Hitler's health, both mentally and physically, was rapidly deteriorating. Things were looking bad, and he was desperate. He said, "We need to turn this thing around, and I have just the trick. Remember a few years back when we blitzkrieged through the Ardennes and trapped the Allied forces in Belgium? Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Again." He gathered his forces
It's not
and
gonna
tried
work.
to pound them through the Ardennes. He used up the remainder of Germany's strength and resources, and he managed to create quite a nice bulge.
Battle of
He
the
also trapped some
Bulge!
American forces in the Belgian town of Bastogne. The Germans sent the trapped Americans a message saying surrender or be annihilated. When it was read out to the commanding officer, he said, "They want to surrender? No, sir, they want us to surrender." Nuts! And that's what they sent off as their official reply. General
What? Nuts! You're fucking smoking dick if you think we are gonna give up, okay, buddy?
Patton's Third Army then managed to break the siege from the southwest, and the Germans...
Especially when our boys got us,
Hitler's
motherfucker!
last-ditch attempt had
Rah!
was a total collapse of the German forces. The Allies pushed into Germany from both sides.
Bitch.
The Soviet Union took Warsaw and kept pushing to Berlin. In his bunker, Hitler realized all hope was lost. Berlin fell, and with it, Hitler's dreams of
final
a great
shot.
German empire. Two of the Axis
Damn,
nations had
bro.
been knocked out. One to go. The Americans began their assault on Okinawa, the last island before they would reach the Japanese mainland. The desperate Japanese fought hard, launching kamikaze attacks on the U.S. ships. The citizens of Okinawa suffered through the terrible fighting, but in 2 months, the island was captured. The Allies now had to make a choice.
2 months.
Either continue the devastating
Every
struggle
island is like a month long, like months long escapade trying to take over.
Japanese mainland, or they could try to coerce the Japanese into surrendering now. In July, the first successful atomic bomb test took place in New Mexico.
I
and the
did watch
destructive weapon
Oppenheimer.
Was ready for use. America and the UK were also seeing the Soviet Union not so much liberating as occupying its captured territories.
Right.
And so they wanted to put on a show of force. On August 6th,
Truman?
the A-bomb fell on Hiroshima. Then, on the 9th, Nagasaki.
We found out, it's a find out portion.
The cities were reduced to rubble, and for the people living there, it was a terrible fate. But for the Allies, it achieved their main aim. In
America pulled up
September,
like Shanks on Marine Ford. They did, bro. Except they didn't say cut that shit out. It'd be like if Shanks just fucking annihilated the Navy. Damn. At every front in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, America was there. I didn't know we were that involved. I thought it was like a few nukes here and a few supplies there. So like Whitebeard, I mean, if America died and got taken over, I guess it's like Whitebeard.
the Emperor and
You know who Whitebeard was like? The UK was kind of Whitebeard. I can't lie. The UK was Whitebeard. If Whitebeard lived, they were holding on for dear life on what little ass island they had, surrounded on every front by this motherfucker, this crazy German motherfucker. And they held the line, and they held the line, and they held the motherfucking line. Because also the UK was obviously at every single war front, battlefront too, of course. So they were, of course, helping, getting their get back, and they held the line. Do not give the UK Whitebeard title. They held it, bro. They earned it in World War II. In this war, like if you think about Whitebeard as like somebody holding the line and defending with everything they got, their loved ones, you know, their citizens, their freedom, their allies. They were like the only ally left in Europe, pretty much. And then a lot of historians now argue the second atom bomb was mostly a statement to the Russians, not really to finish off Japan. But also, the Americans, in my school, we were taught it's because they didn't surrender after the first one. That's what we were taught. Maybe that's misinformation.
announced
They
Japan's
get Josu title?
surrender, saying the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. After 6 years,
Wait.
Allies, it achieved their main aim. In September, the Emperor announced Japan's surrender, saying the war situation has developed not necessarily...
Not necessarily. It took 3 days and no response. So damn, we dropped the second one after 3 days. News probably didn't even break to Japan. Actually, you probably said the mushroom cloud from the whole country. Never
to
mind.
Japan's advantage. After 6 years, war was finally over. The Allies occupied Japan for 8 years. The Emperor was allowed to keep his position, but General MacArthur made sure this picture was printed in the Japanese press to display to the
Fucking
Japanese
psycho.
people that their Emperor was not the divine
Like he was so psycho.
powerful being they had believed. Germany was divided between America, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union. In 1949, the Allied sectors were united into West Germany. The Second World War had been more terrible and destructive than the first. In its
Damn.
aftermath, two major superpowers with two very different ideologies had come out victorious, and the tension between the two of them would create a new kind of war.
So World War
A
II
very,
basically
very cold one. Wow, Churchill, that looks just like...
created World War II created America. Well, chat, that is World War II. I learned a lot. World War III win. Oh my God. Do not say that.